The Colorado River Basin is critically important to the U.S. and provides water and power to 40 million people in 7 states and 22 tribes. This river basin not only provides water to millions of people, but it supports billions of dollars in economic activity, irrigates 15% of U.S. crops, and is the water source for 24 parks, wildlife refuges, and recreational areas. The map shows that the Colorado River Basin can be divided into 2 regions, the upper basin, which encompasses the majority of the source region, and the lower basin. Lake Powell stores water coming from the upper basin with its massive capacity of 30 cubic kilometers. This stored water is then released into the lower basin and stored in Lake Mead with similar capacity. This system was the subject of the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation's Colorado River Basin study, and it used RDM to help characterize the river's vulnerabilities and evaluate options for improving the potential supply and demand imbalance. As part of the Colorado River Basin study, researchers evaluated thousands of plausible futures for the basin, 23,508 futures to be exact. These futures represent plausible combinations of demand, supply, and system operation conditions. In the Colorado River Basin, the level of the large Lake Mead Reservoir is a critical indicator of Colorado River supplies. As the graphic on the right shows, many of the plausible futures would lead to Lake Mead emptying without dramatic policy changes and investments. Note that each line represents one plausible evolution of the lake level over the next 3 to 4 decades in response to uncertain supply and demand. Importantly, the basin is vulnerable if Lake Mead levels drop below 1,000 feet, as this not only is a result of dwindling water storage, but it also affects the ability for Las Vegas to draw water from the Colorado River Basin system. The red line on the graph to the left shows one example future in which Lake Mead drops below the critical 1,000-foot level multiple times and for many years. The graph on the right summarizes the minimum Lake Mead level for all the 23,000 cases evaluated. Note that the majority drop below the 1,000-foot threshold. The RDM vulnerability analysis helps us to understand which uncertain conditions are most influential on whether or not Lake Mead levels drop below 1,000 feet. The analysis shows that the main factors are related to the supply and specifically the annual mean stream flow at Lee's Ferry, a point halfway between the upper and the lower basin, and the minimum 8-year mean flow, also at Lee's Ferry. This graphic shows the values for these 2 uncertainties for 12,000 of the plausible uncertain futures. Note that the simulations span a wide range of values for both the uncertainties. There is also a noticeable correlation between the 2, although it is not perfect. Now we shade all results in which Lake Mead levels drop below 1,000 feet in red. Now let's turn to a simple version of our RDM vulnerability analysis tools, one which enables us to define the conditions that lead to these vulnerable outcomes with respect to the 2 variables. Note that in this analysis we are trading off between defining conditions in which all described outcomes are vulnerable, but a box that doesn't explain many of the vulnerable cases, like the small box in the lower left, to a box that might encompass many more vulnerable cases, but also many non-vulnerable cases. RDM analysts must carefully consider this trade-off between the density of vulnerable cases and the coverage of vulnerable cases. Let's have a look at a few other boxes using the tools.